So let me introduce you. We've got Sharon James on the podcast today from GCC Menopause Hub, which is out in the Middle East. You're based in Dubai, Sharon?
Correct. Yes. I've been here for 16 years now.
Fantastic. So shall we jump straight into it? And I'll fire the first question over to you, Sharon, because it fascinates me. And I've been to Dubai a number of times. You've got a huge cultural difference in Dubai. You have European women, you have Muslim women. What is the divide, or is there a need for knowledge across the entire sector?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think there's a divide. I think it's lack of knowledge for all women, and I think that's global, not just here. We really run on the back of what's happening in the UK. The UK are very forefront in talking about menopause and stuff. When I first started talking about menopause 10 years ago, I couldn't even get it in print. And that goes more or less for women's health in general, not just about menopause. And so it's taken years to get this word menopause into the newspapers. I'm literally just getting it on TV over the next couple of months. So I think in women's health in general, it's always been taboo to talk about in the culture here. That said, it is changing a lot since I've been here over the last 16 years. Women are taking more interest in their own health and well-being. I think that's the key. It's for the women to start to understand what they need to do to be able to navigate not just menopause, but just their health and well-being in general. And there are different cultural societies that don't talk about it and never will. And that's just the way it has to be, even if it comes down, not just menopause, periods, anything to do with women's health and well-being, it's just not spoke about in the household, for example. So, and that's cultural, and that's just how they handle it. So they go and find out this information for themselves, and that's the key thing. It's about getting the right education to the right people, to every woman, not just whether you're Muslim or Western, I think.
Sharon, I think it's incredible to see what's going on here just in this podcast. We have Lawrence in the UK, we have you in Dubai, and we have me in the United States, and we're all seeing and experiencing the exact same thing with what's going on with women. And I'm curious, what is your take on how did we get here? How did we get to the point where this isn't talked about? Why is there a shame that comes with talking about menopause, or if that's even the right word to use? But how did we arrive at a place where something that happens to 100% of women isn't widely talked about or isn't even comfortably talked about?
That's a great question, because it's not just about the now. It goes back to the 1900s. Women, they knew about menopause then, but back then it was deemed as the crazy disease. Women didn't live until they got to 50, so it was never studied. Women got put in institutions because they were going through symptoms and deemed crazy. So up until the 1960s, 1970s, all the studies were done on men, and women are deemed to be complicated. And we are complicated when it comes to our hormonal profile. So a lot of studies were never done on us. They were done on white male 45-year-olds, and that has absolutely nothing to do with us. So up until 2010, I think, or maybe a bit before, studies were then started to be done on us, for us, like for our hormonal profile and stuff like that. So you're right, it's crazy that we're only just learning about what women's health is, especially our hormonal profile, how it affects us emotionally, mentally, and physically. And there's, but it might be too late for my generation, because I'm already through it. I'm done. I'm in post. But for the younger generation, there is so much more research coming out, and it's quite fascinating, really. I wish I had my time again and to go through it. There's loads of studies coming out. So I think for the younger generation, it's a given that now they'll be able to manage it better and understand it and control it before they get to menopause and understand it. That's why the education is so important. And that taboo is, dare I say it, I did it myself with my mum, said, oh, she's going through the menopause. And I'm sure we've heard it like a million times, and I've even had it thrown at me. And it's true, we are going through something different, but it's biological. We don't understand it until we actually get to it, or we didn't understand it till we got to it. So how are we supposed to know how to navigate it? And then you've obviously got the HRT, which was back in 2002, was deemed to be associated with cancer. So a lot of women, not my generation, the baby boomers, I think. Am I a baby boomer? I'm not quite sure. I don't know. I don't know whether I'm Gen Z, Gen X, baby boomer, or whatever, but I think it was the baby boomers. They basically got this report came out from the Women's Health Institute, and basically it said that HRT is bad for you. It causes cancer, and overnight billions of women put their HRT in the bin and never took it again. And we're just recovering from that now, in terms of confidence in HRT and education around HRT. So there's been a lot of negativity against us learning what's right for us, if that makes sense.
Sharon, that's really interesting, and thank you for that insight. But what would you now say the biggest myth in the Middle East is around menopause?
In the Middle East, it's a tough one, that one, because if you speak to the locals, the Emiratis, they'll be like, oh, I'll deal with that when I get there. I don't need to think about it. It's all about the longevity. They're all about, not all of them, and I say this with tongue in cheek, they're looking after themselves aesthetically rather than internally or educationally, if that makes sense. So they still associate it with age. I think that's the biggest myth. They're associating it with age, and it's not, because we know that menopause can affect us in our 30s and early 40s, which is really young. So I think the biggest myth is that we don't have to worry about it. We can wait until we get to our 40s and 50s. Why bother worrying about it when I don't even know how I'm going to transition through it? But we now know that understanding it, even when you get into the peri or the post-menopause stage, we still have to be mindful of the diseases that we might get due to the fact that we haven't got estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, like cardiovascular, insulin, and osteoporosis. So it's not just, I'll just deal with it when I get there. It might be too late, or you might be suffering, So I think that's the biggest myth. Still, it's an old age thing, not a female natural biological thing that's going to happen.
And have you heard about the We Do Not Care Club all the way over in Dubai? Have you heard about this movement?
I've seen clips. Yes, I have.
You've seen, yeah. And it's such a powerful message for women, I think, to advocate for. My interpretation is we've cared about everyone and everything around us for all of these years. And now this is wreaking havoc on our bodies and our minds. And we need to stop caring about the BS. We need to prioritize ourselves. Right. But what is is there a similar sense, in the Middle East, where women are just, taking that approach of, what? We're not dealing with this, that, or the other thing. We're dealing with ourselves. Or is that movement not happening?
No, it is. It is moving. It is moving. But I think it comes down to education and an awareness of yourself. It's understanding that, I speak to mums, I speak to career women, I speak to, women that haven't had children, and we're nurturers, we're caregivers. We love to care for other people, and it is. A lot of mums, I guess, feel selfish if they take that time back for themselves and they're not giving it to the kids. And there's a whole mind shift set behind it that needs to happen, I think. But it's definitely catching on here in a good way. And it's not like we're just, packing our suitcase. Well, some people pack their suitcases and leave their husbands or whatever. Divorce rates are high in this age group, of course. Instigated by women because of that reason that you just said. They've just had enough. They've put up with so much for so long, and that progesterone caring, hormone is not there anymore. So we just give up, not give up, just put ourselves first for a bit, I think. And I think it is a movement, and we are talking about that at the summit this year. We're talking about how much women need to care for themselves. Across the board, about financial well-being. Some women get to this stage and, don't have any financial security. And there's a lot of insecurity that comes with that as well. So, if this divorce rate is higher, how do women survive if they've been, not had their financial well-being for themselves and it's just been a family unit? So we're talking a lot of things this year. If you're coming over, Lawrence, you'll be quite surprised what we're talking about this year.
Fantastic. Sharon, the one thing that fascinates me with Dubai, and, let's be honest, the Emiratis, they have their mindset, they have their culture. They're not going to change anytime soon for obvious reasons, and we have to respect that. But in Dubai, specifically Dubai, and the same could be said for Kuwait or for Saudi, you've got this workplace where you've got people from other nations, Europeans, working within the Middle Eastern culture and working for American companies, English companies, all sorts of companies. Those women have to have a standardization of healthcare, a need in the workplace. How are they marrying these two different cultures in the workplace? That fascinates me.
In terms of when it comes to menopause or just women's health
Correct.
in general?
Yeah, or hormonal health in general.
Yeah. I just think it comes down to, when you're in the workplace, I think it's having, when we do go into corporates, it's about having that open door policy for every woman to be able to walk through the door. It doesn't matter what culture you're in. It's having the right people to listen to you. And obviously, if you're in a Western environment or corporate company, having women in HR, for example, or the wellbeing leads as women for the Emiratis to go and have that conversation with, because they wouldn't have it with a man. I probably wouldn't have it with a man either. If I was in my younger days now, I wouldn't care, but the younger generation might. So they've just got policies in place of. I don't think when it comes to, you just got to be sensitive of how you approach this, what wording you use, what language you use, and being mindful that sometimes things might not change, but as long as we can change it for the individual, then that's all that we can do. We're doing the right thing. And a lot of women who are in Western companies or corporate companies anyway have a different mindset. They do have a different mindset, and they are quite open to talk about things. So there's not that much of a divide, but we've got to be cultural sensitive, I guess, when we're having conversations, and the type of language that we use, I guess. But I think looking from the outside into Dubai or into the GCC, I think people think that there is a massive divide between what we think as Westerners and what they think. There isn't. We're women. We think the same. We go through the same stuff. It's just how we have those conversations in the family that might be different. And some women don't talk to their partners about any of their health and well-being. So they have to take it upon themselves. But they have a massive network around them of women that will listen. So that's the difference, I think.
How I know that the GCC has a resource for men, and I know that you're talking to men in the GCC hub. How, if we were to flip the script a little bit on what you were just saying, how would you give advice to a man who might want to try to initiate a conversation about this? Understanding that both partners are experiencing some level of difficulties. She's going through it, but whatever that looks like for her is going to be something that he's going to feel. And if she's not opening up to him, how can he potentially turn the page and sort of open up to her? Is that something you talk about?
Yeah, a lot, because, and I think again, it comes down to education, get them to go and do some research. There's loads of portals, websites, you've got one there yourself, that men can actually, go and read about it, or even talk to other guys. I mean, it might come out a different conversation, but, having that conversation, opening up, and helps. So I think education is the first thing. Understanding that it's not something that we choose to do. We will go through it naturally. We will go through it, but how we manage it, yes, it comes down to us, how we manage it, how it affects us. But if they understand what is happening on various levels, then they can sort of navigate what they do and don't do within that relationship. And a prime example is a lot of conversation comes around about intimacy. That has a bigger impact on a relationship. But when you're in a couple, it's, oh, she doesn't want sex tonight and she never wants sex, and she's but it's not that. If he understood what was actually happening, that conversation would be completely different, and they could
Correct.
choose as a couple to do something different, have date nights without any
Expectations.
Thanks, Lawrence. Yeah, see, brain fog. So yeah, without any expectations, that your partner is still the same person. So what did you like about her before she started going through the menopause, and how can you bring that person back into the relationship by you surprising her, doing things that she used to enjoy, putting the washing in the washing machine without being asked, all these simple things that can be done that actually helps a lot. And so I think education is one of them, and being interested in what's happening and helping, understanding that you can't solve the problem. You're not, men are problem solvers. That's what you want to do. You want to solve the issue, but co-sharing it is the better word, I think. Co-share it.
Yeah, I think some of the wording you've used there, Sharon, is so important. I think, we have a lot of conversations, me in the UK and Europe and Jesse in the States, but one of the key words which you mentioned so correctly is being interested in what your partner's going through, showing an interest, learning more about how it's impacting her life, not so that you can fix her, not so that you can repair her in any way, shape, or form, but so that you can understand with empathy what she's going through, and most importantly, believe her. The message that's coming back to us from a lot of women is they're feeling unseen in the workplace, they're feeling unseen at home, they're feeling not believed. The children think they're mad, the husband thinks they're mad, the dog runs scared when he hears the wife's handbrake go up in the driveway. There's a conversation, and I think it's the emotional. So many men and women struggle to have this conversation sitting around their dining room table, because you've got the emotions in where she might toot, or she might foof, or she might roll her eyes, and he takes it in the wrong way and he thinks he's being talked down to. So, it's very important that everything here starts with a basic conversation.
Yeah, I agree. And, if you think about the household, women are having their children later. Men are going through their own transition. They are going through what we may be calling andropause these days, but so they're losing their testosterone maybe 1% a year, not so much as we do. You've got kids who are probably going through puberty or, their teenage years. And then you've got the woman in their 40s losing her, so there's a whole host of hormonal profiles going around, and it could, just explode. So having that conversation about how people are feeling and how it affects them, I think is really important. And I think we drive that conversation here as well, to have that conversation around, even like Justice said, maybe going to the doctors with your partner and having that conversation with a medical profession, so that they do understand that their woman's not going mad, and this is a real thing coming from a third party. It might help. So there is a lot of, you're right, it's a lot of understanding and patience, I guess, as well. But yeah.
I hear a lot of men, or at least in the comments, it feels like a lot of men have heard of HRT, or they're aware of it, and they just say, go take this. Like, that seems to fix everything. Just go do that. Right. What are you talking to women about around HRT from the standpoint of maybe alternatives if HRT isn't right for them? What are some other ways in which they can try to get, they can alleviate some of these symptoms?
Yeah. I mean, there's massive discussions on HRT, everywhere. And I think, again, it comes down to education and what's right for the woman, because sometimes they can't take HRT. So what is the alternative? Depending on who you talk to, you're either taking bio or body identical. What's the difference? And is it right for one or is it not right for the other? And depending on who you speak to in the medical profession, one will say yes to one and no, absolutely no to another. So I think it comes down to the individual. Again, it's about education of what's out there. That's why we did the summit, because we're covering all aspects so women can go away and make better informed choices for what they need. So when it comes to HRT, and for me, when I'm coaching my clients, I educate them what it is, what's available. I look at all the adaptogens that they can take, because some of my clients have breast cancer, so they can't take HRT. So what's their alternative? And then making that right decision. And I think with all the hype that's going around with HRT as well, I think it's really important to say to them that HRT is not a miracle cure. It's something that will absolutely pick you up if you need it, but you also have to look at your lifestyle. You have to look at your nutrition, exercise, sleep, and stress to be able to bring it together and make HRT really work well for you. There's a lot of people are pushing HRT, which is great if the women need it, but they also need to be told about the other aspects that actually affect them as well. Because you can be taking HRT, and if you're sleeping 2 hours a night, whatever, then it's not it's not the HRT's fault. It's your lifestyle. It's what's happening. So yeah, but yeah, I think it's education and giving everybody the right options, or the options that they can take.
So, Sharon, we've spoken about quite a few different things, but the one thing we haven't spoken about, which the Middle East is really well known for, is the sheer heat and humidity. How would you say the heat and humidity impacts a woman going through menopause versus living in a colder country?
It's great because we can just put the hot sweats down to the weather. We just it's like, oh God, I'm having a hot sweat. It must be hot. It's the weather. Do you know what? It doesn't. It does affect you a little bit, but because we've got so much air conditioning here. I was in Italy just a couple of weeks ago, and boy, did I suffer because it was hot. I had no air conditioning, so I felt like my body was combusting. And I don't normally suffer with hot sweats as such, but there I seem to have a lot more because maybe my body wasn't used to it. There was no air conditioning, but we've got so much air conditioning out here that I think we can manage quite well. I mean, anybody, even the youngsters, suffer with, you go outside and you're sweating straight away. So it does have a little bit of an impact, but not as much as you would think it would, because we just adapt to the air conditioning or stay in air conditioning as much. And if you're in a work environment, in the workplace, this is some things that you can sort of, we've asked companies to put in place. Some of them are tick boxes, but it's, have a fan on the desk, looking at wearing the different type of clothing, the uniforms that they're wearing, giving them longer breaks maybe to go and cool, have to be able to go and cool down. So there's all different things that they are doing in the workplace here to help that. But generally, it doesn't matter whether you sat in the UK or in the UAE, it's the same because we've got air conditioning. I think it's better here, actually.
So if you could take us back to when you started the GCC, what were you thinking when you started that? What were you trying to achieve? In what is the mission today, and how can people anywhere in the world benefit from what you're doing, or is it focused more in the Middle East? Or if you could just help us understand what your mission is and what you're doing.
Yeah. Firstly, when I did the one last year, like I said at the beginning, it was really hard to get the conversation going here because there was nothing. We couldn't get it in the newspapers. People just weren't understanding and talking about the menopause or even women's health. So last year, I decided to do it on the bigger scale. I did it at the Museum of the Future, and we brought 40 guest speakers to stage to talk about everything. And it was quite amazing. And it's really opened the doors to clinics and having more menopause doctors here as well, which is great. And I think the key focus was to just normalize it, because the actual word for menopause here is age of despair. So that's the starting point we were at. They've changed it now. I think they've changed it to something of hope. which it's not that great either, but it's better than age of despair. So that's what we sort of did last year. We wanted to have the topic open so that it wasn't so much as a taboo. We wanted to talk about it openly, which is what we can do now, and really build a community, because a lot of women, and I think you'll have heard this before, is a lot of women think that they're going through it themselves and they don't feel that they've got somebody that they can turn to. And I think that was one of the biggest takeaways last year, is that women loved being part of a community where they felt normal and it was normalized. So I think that was one of the takeaways last year. And this year we're still doing the same topic, some of the same topics, but we're talking a lot more about vagina health and stuff that we couldn't really talk about last year. So this year we're talking about all stuff like that, longevity. And we're also part of a bigger vision of changing policies and educating doctors. So we're working with King's College of London. We're putting a course together. Not us, we're part of it, but we're the driving force of the medical professionals, educating doctors around menopause, because that's one of the key issues here, is we haven't got enough professionals that know about menopausal health. They think they do, but they don't. And a prime example of that is one of my clients went to her GP a couple of days ago, and she gave her 4 boxes of testosterone gel, which would have lasted for 4 years, because she thought that 1 tube of testosterone gel was per day, not for 8 days. So she'd have grown. The next time I saw her, I think she would have had a beard. Should have carried on taking them. So it's education. Doctors are aware that they haven't got enough training on this, and they openly say that, which is great. So we are trying to have a platform for educating doctors as well. So we're not just about talking about the general public, we're talking about a long vision as well, and going to Saudi and the other GCC countries and doing what we do here.
Sharon, great work you're doing, but I've got a question on the doctors. What are you doing for dentists?
Likewise, same. We've got dentists coming in as well. Yeah, we do know that when your dentistry has a big impact on your hormonal health. We do know that, and gut health as well. So we've got dentists coming in for the summit as well and talking about that. We didn't talk about that last year.
Yes, maybe what you could do now, Sharon, is tell us a little bit more about the summit. How many people are you expecting to come? How many guest speakers have you got? It's happening on the 23rd of October. Is that correct?
It is 23rd of October, and it's going to be at the Mohammed bin Rashid Library, which is a beautiful library, beautiful building. And it's going to be from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., a full day of guest speakers. And we've got activations and booths outside that people can walk around and get, one thing that we didn't have last year, which we have this year, is more space. So people, after the doctors have been on stage, they're going to be available for the audience to go and have conversations with, which I think is really important. So yeah, we're going to it's a full-on day. So we're really, really looking forward to it. And we've got, like I said, we've got an array of topics that we're going to be discussing as well.
Is something that you're talking about over there, which I think is happening over here, is the difficulty women are having dealing with what's going on in their bodies and how they feel, and matching that up with the societal expectations of, what or who a woman is, and how women look, how women are supposed to act. All of those expectations, all of the weights sort of the world on women seem to be crashing down when menopause comes. Is that a global thing, or is that just the United States, and all of the beauty that magazines and pressures that are on women here?
I think it's global. I think you can't get away from that, no matter if you're going through menopause or not. But we do cover that a lot. It's that mind shift with the women. It's getting them to understand who they are, and understanding that menopause is not the end; it's the beginning. Absolutely, if you can nail it, you can absolutely thrive for the next 20, 30 years that you're going to live. And it's because of those expectations of getting to menopause and the narrative behind it as it was, if that's changed, women will grab hold of menopause and absolutely thrive through it. And that's what we're bringing to the summit. We've always done that. Do not let menopause control you. You have to control it. And if you do, you can conquer the world. And we had some really good testimonials last year. One woman came in, she was absolutely floored. She was giving up basically. And after she'd been to the summit, she went away, got the help that she needed, and now she's thriving and she's opened her own business. And she thought that was it. She was done. And if we can just help one woman do that, then I think, we've done our job. So, it's getting them to really understand that menopause is it's actually, if you understand it and manage it, it's actually really good because you change as a woman. I think you come out stronger. But you've got to have that community, societal, around you to be able to do that as well.
I think we all want our women to come out stronger, but us dads, we've got daughters, we've got wives, we've got sisters, and some guys have got obviously still got their moms, and I think all of us want a stronger woman. But what role do we as men play in helping a woman get stronger?
I think that's quite a deep question, really. I think I think it's understanding. Like a lot of men tend to, or have said to me that they seem to lose their partners as they go through the menopause. And I think that's true in some aspect, but it's for men, I think it's having what we spoke about that before, being there to support them, help them with that journey that they're on, encourage them that they are the same person that you met and married and loved and all the rest that goes with that, and help them navigate, because a lot of women are at a stage when they get to the menopause stage, it's sort of coincidental that we are maybe thinking of changing our career. Our kids have gone off to university, or they've grown up and don't need us anymore. So we've got that empty nest syndrome as well. So we're in a pivotal change of life changing, like career changing. So be supportive of what she might want to do, understand where she might want to, her new journey might want to take her to, and help her do that, and I think it's just being supportive of the choices that she makes or wants to make, and going on that journey with her, because you be changing as well. We're all at that, it's that age where your careers might be changing, and it might be that you change as a couple and change direction of where you are and what you want to do. If your children have left or you haven't got children, I think it's just supporting them with whatever decisions they want to make.
I saw in the resource section on GCC Hub for men that you advise men to educate themselves but not be an expert. So yeah. Where do you think that line, Lawrence and I are kind of diving deep into this, and probably deeper than most men need to, but that's because we're really passionate about this and educating husbands and men on what's going on in menopause. But for the average husband, where would you draw that line? What would you advise them to, understand, and where would you say you don't need to go that far?
I think it just comes down to understanding what the menopause is and why women go through it, and noticing the sort of changes that are happening within, your relationship, and what I mean by that is, and it's not just men that do it, women do it as well. It's when you want to try and help somebody, you become an expert and you try to give too much advice, and I've had it myself. My partner at the time used to tell me, he'd learn a lot about it, and then he'd try to tell me what I already knew, which was quite frustrating. So it's just understanding it and not being told that you know more than us about, because you don't. You're never going to know what we're going through. So it's just having I think it's been, what's the word? I think it's just been
like compassionate.
Compassionate, no, that's not even the word. Compassionate, yes, but aware. I think it's having your awareness switched on. Like, that she's not normally moody. That she's not a normally throwing tantrums, but if you can feel the air change in the room, you know what to do. You need to walk away. You need to try and change the conversation. And it's been more, I don't know, I can't think of the words now. My brain's gone. But it's just been having that spatial awareness around you of what's going on within your relationship, and how what the triggers are, what's triggering her, and being able to help and not fuel it, I think.
Yeah. Sharon, you said something right at the start of this conversation about just doing a little chore here and there. With respect to my wife, when we were younger and she was bringing up the family, I went to work. I was the breadwinner. She was the housewife. She was bringing up the children. I came home. My clothes were in my cupboard. My bed was made. My food was on the table. My children, had done their studies. They were being balanced and molded, and all the little things I didn't see. And then our roles reversed. And my wife decided she wanted to go back to work. And I stupidly said, don't worry, I'll work at home and I'll look after the household. My goodness, I never realized what I let myself in for. Trying to do my day job whilst trying to sort the dog out, load the dishwasher, do the washing, get the washing drying, tidy up the house, all the little things. And yet women done all of that and so much more at the same time. And I don't think we as men appreciate or understand the role our partners have played in our lives at those pivotal moments right at the start. And now as we're getting older, how those little things, how if you see she's struggling, making her cup of coffee or getting her that glass of wine or putting the dishwasher on without being asked, or maybe just go and put a load of washing on. And it's those little things that I think help create a safe space where she can let everything out. She just knows she's completely and utterly in a safe space where she can be herself.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what I mean. It's just being aware of what needs to be done without being asked to do it. That does make a big difference. I think you're right, 100%. And I think a lot of women as well, you're right when you say we take on these chores, or not chores, but responsibilities. And as we get towards the menopausal stage, it actually increases, because if we're in a relationship, especially here in the Middle East, and we're going back to the Emirati, they've got extended families that they have to look after as well. So it's not just your nucleus family, it's extended families and jobs and, everything else that goes with it. So, and then all of a sudden it comes crashing down if we're not aware of what responsibilities we're taking on. And some of the stuff that we talk about is taking away some of that responsibility without feeling guilty of farming it out to other people, because we always think, well, you know what, it's easier if I do it myself, because if he has to ask me 10 times how to do it, I might as well have just done it myself. So it's for us we've got to learn to let go as well as women, to let go and let them, let the partners or people around us do things without micromanaging stuff. And because we've always done it doesn't mean we always have to do it. It's just learning. Again, it's that mindset shift of letting go, giving yourself some me time, some self-care, and without feeling guilty. And I think that's the key. And spreading that workload within the family. And I think that's where just you said about what men can do or Lawrence, what men can do to support. It's understanding that, when she asks you to do something, it's not because she can't do it. She just needs you to do it. Or, that's the thing.
And I think it can be little things, right? Like like you're saying, that men don't have to necessarily go through an entire life shift. It's all the little things that need to be done, that happen around the house. I mean, it's little things. I was at the store just yesterday because I had to pick up a prescription, but I was at the pharmacy within the grocery store. I texted my wife and just said, hey, I happen to be at the grocery store. Is there anything that we need? And to be honest, I didn't used to do that. I would just go there and I would get the thing that I needed and I would leave, only to find out later that, she needs to go to the grocery store. So now she's going to go. Right. And it's a little bit of the awareness almost goes beyond just the symptoms, but it's like the context of how everything is affecting, her life, and in the context of everything that, as a man needs to be done. And one of the things that my wife said to me that that always stuck with me, and she said, "Don't ask me if I need help." She said, "If you're asking me if I need help, that's one more thing that I have to do, is explain to you what needs to be done." It's like, don't ask me if I need help. Of course I need help, right? Just
it's like when you say, I'll make dinner tonight, and then you'll ring and go, what would you like for dinner? It's like, I don't need to think about what I need for dinner. I want you to make the dinner and just do it. I don't care I don't care what's on the table. Just do it. Don't ask me. And that they're the little things that just help. You just take that responsibility away from us, and we're happy. That's it.
And it's not trying to be I think some men they'll make that dinner and then just say, they'll step back and be like, "Look what I did." Right. But then they don't do anything else.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. It's like, well, I made dinner yesterday.
Right.
What, a star? A gold star? Yeah. That's what I mean by, when you said that earlier, it's like, what can men do? It's like, don't, do things, but don't expect to be rewarded for it as well. That's the thing. It should be a natural, bond and division between things as well. So
I'll say it, Sharon, just because you gave your wife a foot massage doesn't qualify you to have sex.
Agree. Yes.
So Sharon, we're coming to the end of the podcast, and we thank you for your time. I'd like you to answer one question if I could ask it. And that question would be, hypothetically, if you had 1,000 men in a room and you could only give them one message, what would that message be?
Don't be fearful of the menopause. Embrace it like women have to. And just be educated around it. And your life won't change that much. If you're not educated, your life will be a nightmare. That's what I'd say.
Fantastic message.
Well said.
Yeah. Just be educated. Just be open-minded. Don't be blinkered.
Jesse, anything else from you for Sharon before we say thank you and let Sharon go and have the rest of her Sunday evening?
Yes.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Sharon. We really appreciate it. It's always special to have folks join us on this podcast just to get this message out. And like you said, so well right there, it's about educating yourself as a husband, and not being an expert, but just knowing enough to be aware. And that's something that Lawrence and I are going to continue to try to do. And we appreciate your help. We appreciate your message.
You're welcome. Thank you. Hope to see you again soon.